And that means that there's actually so many revolutionary teachings of the Rebbe, so many teachings and ideas that the Lubavitcher Rebbe, Rabbi Shneerson, taught that are life-changing and really society-changing, and that underpins so much of the dramatic change that he brought in the world around us. But we'll stick with just a few because we don't have a lot of time. We'll find an opportunity to continue with some more. So firstly, who is the Rebbe, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, Rabbi Shneerson? So Hasidism, or the Hasidic movement, however you want to exactly describe it, starts with the Baal Shem Tov. Baal Shem Tov founded Hasidism, and that means that he founded a movement and a philosophy that's all about the power of every neshama, of every soul, and the infinite worth of the soul of every individual, and the potential that every individual has to connect to God in his or her way. So Hasidism inspires and encourages and fosters people to maintain that connection with passionate observance of the Torah and the mitzvahs. The Torah and mitzvahs are given to us by God as a means of establishing a connection to God and living a greater and better life. And Hasidism teaches us to maximize that potential in ourselves and to find that ability in our souls. Chabad Hasidism started soon thereafter with the Alter Rebbe, the first Chabad Rebbe, Rabbi Shneerson, who really brought these ideas of Hasidism into a systematic, intellectual system of teachings and understanding and bringing these ideas home for every individual onto this very day when we're still able to study these teachings and their inspiration that they give us. A lot of what we've been studying in these classes are teachings of Hasidism. Rebbe, the last Lubavitcher Rebbe, was the seventh in line of the Alter Rebbe. He was a great-great-grandson of this first Rebbe and the seventh Rebbe after him. Rebbe was born in Ukraine in 1902, son of a great rabbi, chief rabbi of the city of Dnepropetrovsk, then known as Yugoslav, which is a major Jewish center in the south of Ukraine. And he grew up with intense scholarship, studying Torah assiduously and growing in wisdom in many areas. Rebbe ultimately married the daughter of the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe, Rabbi Shneerson, who was also a distant cousin of his. And after their marriage, the couple spent time in Berlin as well as in Paris, where the Rebbe was pursuing higher education. The Rebbe acquired a degree in electrical engineering, which later came to be in the Brooklyn Navy Yard during World War II. I'm just going to mute everyone so there's no static coming back through. When you want to comment, you can just unmute yourself. So in World War II, came to the Rebbe during his studies. Originally, the Rebbe left Berlin after the Nazis came to power and things got worse and worse. And then the Rebbe and the Rebbetzin, his wife, escaped from Paris ahead of the Nazi invasion, and ultimately, miraculously, barely made it out of southern France in 1941 and made it to the United States. In 1950, when the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe passed on, the Rebbe took over the leadership of Chabad and really made it his goal and made it very clear as a mission and as a goal to achieve that we're going to improve this world and bring so much good and so much fulfillment of mitzvahs and so much improvement at an individual and global scale to the point that we should be ready for the Messianic era, the time of the Moshiach, when we understand the Torah teaches us the world will be a more perfect place, a more godly place, a place of peace, a place of good health, a place of prosperity, a place of friendship, a place of divine wisdom. We reach that Messianic point by improving the world on our own all the way through. The Rebbe said, let's make it happen. Let's do as many mitzvahs as we can do. Let's connect as many people as we can connect and really make the world that better place, that messianic place. And that's the Chabad project, shall we call it, that many are familiar with, the Rebbe's life mission of really expanding the reach of Chabad beyond imagination throughout the entire world. In over 100 countries, there are Chabad representatives, such as myself, bringing these ideas to life. And the mission continues. We're still working on the goal. We're getting really close, hopefully really soon. Now, that's just a brief background to understand who the Rebbe is. But I think that this little clip might give us a little taste, shall we say, of the Rebbe and his leadership. So let's bring that up. You'll hear a famous actor narrating this clip. I'll take no opinion of whether we should like or dislike this actor, but he is Jewish and he does a great job.
Is a kinder and gentler place because of a sainted man whose immense spirituality and holiness projected for everyone, for you and me, a life filled with happiness and the performance of good deeds. This special man I speak of is Rabbi Menachem Mendel Schneerson. Each Sunday, the Rebbe would receive thousands of men, women, and children from all walks of life, regardless of race, color, or creed, and among them were world leaders, children, scholars, simple folks, students, and laymen. To each of them, the Rebbe gave $1 bill, making them his partner to give it to the charity of their choice. Why the dollar? The Rebbe explained his custom by quoting his father-in-law, Rabbi Yosef Yitzhak of Lubavitch, who would often say, when two people meet, something good should result for a third. The Rebbe wished to elevate each of the thousands of encounters of the day to something more than just a meeting of two individuals. He wanted that each should involve the performance of a mitzvah, a good deed, particularly a mitzvah that also benefits another individual. The Rebbe, at the age of 92, would stand for as long as 8 hours without interruption to receive his visitors. Yet in the few seconds that he or she was with the Rebbe, each person felt that the Rebbe was there only for them. It was as though he or she were the only visitor of the day. Once, an elderly woman could not contain herself and burst out, "Rebbe, how do you do it? How is it that you do not tire?" The Rebbe smiled and replied, "Every soul is a diamond. Can one grow tired of counting diamonds? You can marvel at the unending list of educational, charitable, social, and religious programs inaugurated around the world. You can study the more than 200 volumes of his published works. The Rebbe strove to realize Maimonides' vision of a world free of death and destruction. Toward his goal, the Rebbe took a generation from the ashes of the Holocaust and inspired the rebuilding of Jewish life to the great crescendo it has reached today. In 1994, the world lost the Rebbe's physical presence. But the Rebbe's continued leadership inspires his disciples to establish and build communities across the globe, more now than ever before. The Rebbe devoted his life to our good deeds. And through our good deeds, the Rebbe lives on.
So, after so much introduction to understand who is it that we are discussing, the Rebbe, whose revolutionary teachings we want to look at, let's get a look at some of those teachings. Our first is the Rebbe's opening statement. And I'm not the only one calling it the opening statement, but the Rebbe called it his statement himself. And that means that in 1950, as mentioned, his father-in-law, the previous Rebbe, passed on, and the Rebbe actually refused to accept the leadership and to fill that role for a full year, although the Hasidim implored him to take that position and show that leadership and take the community forward. The Rebbe preferred the quiet and solitude of his study and tried to turn that down. Ultimately, after a year of the first anniversary of the passing of the previous Rebbe in 1951, the Rebbe did accept that leadership. And at the gathering of the Hasidim, the Rebbe said, you have to follow the local custom. And the custom in the United States is that at such a moment, a leader or an individual stepping up to a new role should make a statement, something dramatic, something shocking, make a statement, make an impact. Well, the Rebbe said that his statement centers around the three loves that the Torah teaches. So the Torah speaks of three kinds of love, shall we call it. The love of God, we say it in the Shema prayer every day. V'ahavta et Hashem Elokecha, love your God. Love of the Torah, commitment and passion and feeling for the mitzvahs of the Torah. And of course, love of your fellow man. Love your neighbor like yourself. Three directions of love: love upwards towards God, love towards the teachings and the gift that God has given us in the Torah, and love towards our fellow man. Well, the Rebbe's statement is that we should understand that these three are interdependent. We don't have one without the other. Love of God is abstract and not fulfilled without the love and commitment to the Torah and mitzvahs that allow us to connect to God. People can say they love God, but they have no true means of living by that and making that a part of their life without the Torah that God has given us and the way of life that God instructs us how to live in this world, that is the mitzvahs. Well, that is understood, but conventional wisdom would have it that it's possible to have that love and commitment to God and that bond with God for the fulfillment of mitzvahs, even without love of your fellow man and love of your fellow Jew. Conventional wisdom would assume that some people may be better at looking out for and helping and loving the other, and some people less so, but they can still be committed to God. Well, the Rebbe said no. If you love the father, you love the children. Nobody can honestly say that they love a parent, father or a mother or a couple, but they don't love their children. Then the love to the parents is incomplete. Nobody can truly and honestly say that they love God and they are committed to God's teaching and way of life if they don't show love to God's children, to their fellow man, to their fellow human being, to their fellow Jew. And that means all the children. Parents love their children even when they're not perfect. Parents love their children even if they are handicapped or otherwise challenged. And we, if we are loving God and therefore also loving his children, we should be loving every one of those children, even if they are less than perfect. And that takes us to a story that the Rebbe himself says, and we can hear that from the fellow who heard it from him in brief.
Rabbi David Edelman was a student at 770 during the 1940s.
Once I was standing with a few boys in the hallway in 770, and the elevator opens up, and the Rebbe comes out. And he comes over to the Bachrim, and he tells us what went on upstairs between him and the Frierdiker Rebbe. He says, I was by the Rebbe. This was in the early years. And I asked the Rebbe if I am doing right. What is the question? Am I doing right? So the Rebbe said to his father-in-law, he says, I have an office here in the Americas, and all kind of people come in to see me. Some very religious people, and not so religious people. Some come and they leave a donation for the Americas, and some don't. But I greet everyone friendly. To everyone is there. Am I doing right? Because some people come in are very far away from Torah mitzvahs, and I don't say anything to them. Maybe they think it's not so, but I don't say anything to them. So the Rebbe said to me, it is in the teva, the nature that God created a father and a mother, that no matter how many children they have enough love for all their children. That is the way God created the world. Even if among a big family, one child has a problem with a hand, can't move a hand, or a child has a problem with a leg, he can't move his foot. So to that child, the father and mother have a special ava, a special closeness, as felt the mepis, because it's lacking. So if a Jew comes into your office, that's Mekayim ala mitzvahs, shasam, aseh, that you take wholeheartedly, a tayrayid. But suppose a Jew comes into you who's missing a hand, he doesn't put on tefillin. He's missing a foot, he doesn't go to shul. So to that Jew, you have to have a deeper love because he's lacking. The more he's lacking, the greater your ava has to have to that Jew.
So far from somebody's deficiencies being a reason to push them away or to stop caring for and showing love to them, well, we should be just as a parent who shows more love towards a child who has a setback or a handicap. And if we feel that another person that we meet has that kind of deficiency in one form or another, we should be showing them more love and positivity in the effort to help them along and in the effort to reflect our love to God, the parent of that child. So that would be the first revolutionary teaching of the Rebbe, which is the interdependence of these loves. One cannot be loving of God without showing love to your fellow man. The next teaching is essentially a teaching of the Rambam, of Maimonides, but this is something the Rebbe brought to life and taught a lot, explained, and it really stands at the center of what the Rebbe was trying to do, and we're all working on to this very day. Let's have a look. The Rambam Maimonides writes, throughout the year, a person should always look at himself as equally balanced between merit and sin, and the world is equally balanced between merit and sin. If he performs one sin, he tips his balance, that of the world, to the side of guilt and brings about destruction. On the other hand, if he performs one mitzvah, he tips his balance, and that of the entire world, to the side of merit and brings it deliverance and salvation to himself and others. Now, what this means in the conventional sense is that the divine judgment is measured ultimately in percentages, as Maimonides explains there. So none of us are perfect, but we try to do the right thing as much as we can, and God says this individual or this society or this group are more often than not doing the right thing, and that brings blessing and goodness. Those who actually more often than not are on the wrong side of the coin end up bringing about negativity. Well, Rambam tells us we should always see ourselves and the world we live in as 50-50. There's good there's also negative, and it's 50-50. If we do just one more good thing, we'll tip the scale. It will become 51-49. There'll be a little more good than bad, and that will bring everything to the side it should be and bring the divine blessing. Now, this is, of course, a powerful motivation and a sense of responsibility when we always see everything as at that 50-50 point, and what we do can make all the difference, can tip the majority to right over to the side that it needs to be. But the Rebbe insists that the Torah is Torah's emes. It's a Torah of truth. There's no exaggeration in the Torah. There's nothing that is described that is not literally so. But how can that be? How can we be saying that we're constantly viewing ourselves in a situation of 50-50? We may know personally it's not 50-50. We may see the society around us that it's not 50-50. What does that mean to view it that way when it doesn't actually seem to be that way? So there are many explanations that Rebbe discusses about this, but one way of understanding this is with the belief and the understanding that every moment, every situation, everything, every encounter, really every step and every detail and down to every moment of life in this world is created by God for a purpose. Nothing is by chance and nothing is extra. There is a purpose and there is a goal and there is a mission, an objective for every situation and for every moment. So at this moment, where we are right now, at the choice I face right now, in the minute that I'm experiencing now, in the encounter that I am a part of right now, it's 50-50. I can do it right or do it wrong. I can use this as a positive increase in goodness and blessing in our world, or this can become a negative and a decrease and a destruction, as the Rambam calls it, in our world. So outside of what's happening in the broader world, really, there is a certain moment that belongs to me. There's a certain situation that belongs to me right now, and that responsibility is mine right now. And really, the whole universe is essentially looking at me, say, okay, you were faced with this opportunity or challenge or moment. Nobody else, it's yours. Are you going to deliver on it for all of us? Are you going to use that to its potential and bring out the goodness that this moment was created for, that your individual contribution would be for, and bring that blessing for all of us, because none of us can do it for you? Or will you use that on the negative? So it's 50-50 for ourselves and for our entire universe in every specific interaction and every specific situation, because that particular situation or moment was granted to me and only to me by God, and it's up to me to use it right and to its fullest. And in that 50-50 situation, it can go one way or another, and the responsibility as well as the opportunity is mine. And that means that not only is this somewhat a frightening sense of responsibility, but that also helps us recognize that what we do at this moment, that we do at this situation, this opportunity that's before us right now, is not hampered by what happened yesterday or in any other moment or situation that we may face. So, in the second revolutionary teaching of the Rebbe, we understand this 50-50 idea. Looking at ourselves and the world around us is in that position. It couldn't go one way or another. It depends all about how much goodness will I inject right now. And let's do our best and inject a little more goodness right now. And finally, as a third and final for tonight, revolutionary and critical teaching of the Rebbe taught throughout his leadership that our time is what he called the last generation of the exile and the first generation of the redemption. So in brief, that would mean that there used to be a time, and we talked about this in one of the recent classes, we used to have more experience of godliness. God's presence was felt. We talk about the miracles that you have in the Torah itself. We talk about the temple in Jerusalem in the times of the great Jewish Commonwealth, when God's presence was felt, when the divine energy was tangible, and we lived a more divine life. When the destruction and the suffering came to Israel and to the Jewish people, that also is an expression of a distance from God and all the challenges of what we call the exile over the last almost 2,000 years. And that's generation after generation endeavoring to, as we were talking, improve our world and upgrade and enhance and bring ourselves back to that good position, to the closeness of God and the goodness in our world, and not only back to, but to a greater messianic age than has ever been before. The question becomes, how could the Rebbe say that our generation is that last negative generation, the last generation of exile, and therefore also the first generation of the good times, of the messianic times? That we have the potential and will ultimately succeed in ending the negativity and the fact that God's presence is not felt and all the suffering and not good that happens in our world because of it, and bringing a time of closeness to God and of goodness for all people. How can that be? We know in Jewish tradition that in the past there were great spiritual giants. There was Moses, there was King David, there were prophets, there were the great scholars of the Talmud. There were great people in our history that did so much great things, and they taught so much wisdom that we are studying until this day. And they had that sense of closeness to God that we can only imagine. How can we reach what they could not? If they didn't bring about a messianic time, if they didn't perfect the world to its fullest, how can we? Can a midget, can a small person reach something that a giant cannot? Well, conventional wisdom would say no. But here's where the Rebbe points out that you're making one mistake. The midget and the little guy cannot achieve what the great and giant individual could not. But imagine a midget standing on the shoulders of the giant. Then that little guy is now just a little taller than the giant. And if the giant reaches up his hand and comes close to the goal, but cannot quite reach it, if the 7-foot athlete almost reaches the basketball hoop, but not quite, a little guy at his shoulders can bridge that little remaining gap. So the good that has been accomplished in our world all through these generations, the good that has been invested, the good that has been achieved by the great people who came before us in all those times that we spoke of, that good is still here. We tend to see the negative. We tend to read headlines. Headlines are almost always negative. We tend to see how much of the not good is in our world. But the Rebbe points out that in the Torah we understand that a mitzvah is forever, and a goodness and godliness that we bring into our world is forever. We build up on that. All of the mitzvahs and all of the good deeds that were done in the generations that precede us are still with us. It's like the giant reaching almost to the goal and the athlete reaching almost to the hoop. And when we climb up on top of that and add just a little bit more, we can reach the goal, we can make it happen. So on the one hand, people tend to describe our generation as what in Jewish teachings would call ikvus the Moshiach, the heels of the time of the Moshiach, the lowest generation. If all of time was like a human form, then Moses perhaps was the head, and other great people, and we might be down to the feet, be feeling so distant and ignorant of God and his presence and of that better and truer way of life. But the feet of a human being are also the only ones that can bring him to the destination. No person can get places by virtue of their head or heart, as great and special as that part of the body may be. We need the feet to walk around. So there may have been great people before us who did so much good, but our little additional contribution is like the feet executing the goal. We are the only ones who are in this world right now and have the choice to do good and bring about good, bring about a messianic age, a much better time, a more perfect world for all of mankind and for all of history. So that Rebbe teaches us let's go for it. Let's do another mitzvah. Let's do even a little bit more good and tip that scale so we could make that messianic time come about today. And this concludes our revolutionary teachings of the Rebbe for tonight. And as mentioned, just a small sample, but some powerful ideas for us to think about. And as usual, Tuesdays we have the Parsha weekly Torah class. Wednesdays, the women's class is going to be the third in the series of the Rebbe's letters. And Thursday, we will continue with wisdom from the Talmud, Talmudic wisdom for life, hoping to see you all then. In the meantime, I'm going to stop the live stream. If anybody